Welcome everyone to the Introduction to Jira Align webinar. Over the next hour, we are going to be obviously talking about Jira Align, but I'm also going to get into the tool and show you what Jira Align really looks like. So before we jump in, just some quick introductions. My name is Vicki Murphy. I am an Enterprise Solutions Architect at XBM, which is a Platinum Solutions partner with Atlassian. Talk a little bit more about who we are and what services we offer later on in this presentation. I am also joined today by my colleague Heather. She will be helping monitor the Q&A and sending some helpful resources in the chat, so do pay attention to those. All right. I also have a small special announcement today. We're going to be giving away a pair of custom AirPods, so we will announce the winner at the end of the hour, but do stay tuned to see if you will win those. All right. On the agenda for today, we're wrapping up the introduction really with this slide. We're going to jump into some concepts. So I have a couple more slides to show you. We're talking about a large tool like Jira Align. There's a couple of really just high-level concepts it's good to align around before we get into Jira Align. No pun intended. We will then jump into the tool. I will demonstrate some of the most used areas of the tool that we find really useful for organizations, especially when they're starting out on their Jira Align journey. At the end of the hour, we will have some time for Q&A. So if you have a question throughout this presentation, do drop it in the Q&A panel in Zoom. We'll get to as many of those at the end of the hour as we can. All right. The first concept I like to briefly talk about is the overall positioning of Jira Align. It is a little bit different than other Atlassian tools you may be familiar with. Jira Align really is designed for organizations who have implemented or in the process of implementing a framework for scaled Agile. A couple examples that are popular, the SAFe framework or the Spotify model. We have found that organizations are generally most successful with implementing Jira Align when they have been through at least one program increment planning process. So you might also know this as a PI or a quarterly planning increment. And we have seen this be the most successful really for a couple of reasons. First, asking your end users to learn a brand new process and a brand new tool can be a lot while they still have a day job that they are needing to complete. And also a lot of how you configure Jira Align depends on your process. So when you have a little bit of that process under your belt, it's just that much easier to make the configuration decisions in the tool, and it makes it go that much smoother. Jira Align is a large-scale tool. You're going to hear me say that a lot in this presentation, but it is a large-scale tool that is designed for enterprises. It does have a higher price point than other Atlassian tools like Jira, and it is designed for enterprises with at least 500 developers. We believe that smaller companies may struggle a little bit with either the high price point or the overall size of the tool, or potentially both. If you feel that you might be in this category, don't fret. There's still a lot of really great options in the Atlassian ecosystem for you. I'm going to talk briefly about one called Advanced Roadmaps in just a couple of slides. We'll just talk a little bit about how you can use that at the beginning of your scaling journey. As we will see, Jira Align can handle the planning and visualization of work from the C-suite to the Agile team. Another way to say that is it helps us connect our strategy to our execution. And it is an overall robust application that aligns our work across the enterprise. Scaled planning is one of the main concepts that plays into Jira Align. If you've taken any type of scaled planning training, you may have seen this image specifically or something similar. And what I like about it is that it is really busy, but I think it really does help us visualize all of the moving pieces that are happening whenever we're talking about scaled planning. I'm just going to briefly walk through these, primarily so that when we get in the tool, you will see just how it really is organized around these concepts. In the bottom corner here, we have our sprint planning. This is that team level. We're working in our sprints or our time boxes. Typically, we're working to plan and execute our stories. Box 3 here talks about big room planning. You may have heard that called PI planning. It is where we are working with our features, those deliverable pieces of work that are going to be delivered in that program increment. We have things like our backlog and our program board, which we will take a look at today in Jira Align. We also have our portfolio level here in box 2. This is where we're working with our epics, those broader pieces of work. They last multiple program increments, maybe multiple years. We're doing things like prioritizing, pivoting, and persevering budgeting at this level. And we also have some cross slices of data when it comes to product management. We'll take a brief look at this in the tool. It's not always a piece of the tool that everyone needs, but it is there if you fall into that category. All right. As you can really see, starting a scaled Agile transformation or scaling Agile in your organization can be a very long and complex undertaking. Tools are never going to define that process for us, but they are invaluable in our planning, tracking, and visualizing of our work. This slide, I'd like to really talk about or start introducing the concepts around how Jira Align handles that complexity of scale. What Jira Align really helps us with is syncing people, the work they do, and time across our enterprise. We're able to easily go from our team level all the way up to our enterprise level, or again, from our strategy all the way down to our execution. Jira Align also offers product management, strategic portfolio, and scale development modules to help us really coordinate that cross-team and cross-functional collaboration all within the same tool. One thing I like to point out on this diagram is the idea that we are working with both Jira software and Jira Align. Little bit of history here. When Jira Align first started, it was a product called AgileCraft, and it was designed as a full stack tool. So everyone in the organization was working in one tool. A few years ago, Atlassian acquired AgileCraft and turned the tool into Jira Align as we know it today. When they did that, they already had a really great team tool. We do believe that Jira software is a great tool for that Agile team level with functionality like our Agile boards, our filters, dashboards, and a lot of integration points to potentially other tools as well that really help our Agile teams. When it comes to planning above that team level, though, into our program portfolio, enterprise, et cetera, and facilitating alignment throughout our organization at the various levels through the various activities that we see represented here on this diagram, that is where Jira Align really starts to shine. So when you're working with Jira Align, generally your team level is here in Jira software, and we have syncing in between the tools so everyone has the information that they need to do their work. As Jira Align helps us plan and execute our work, we are really working with those 3 hierarchies I previously mentioned: people, the work they do, and different time boxes. Sometimes this slide can be a little bit overwhelming, but in reality, if you think about all of the work your organization does, it really boils down to these 3 concepts: who is doing the work, what work are they doing, and in what time frame are they trying to complete their work in. When we jump into Jira Align, you will recognize a lot of these words immediately. The tool really is organized around these 3 hierarchies. To just briefly walk through, when we're talking about people, we're again talking about really those layers of scale. At the top, we have our enterprise, our top people in our organization, often the C-suite. We then have our portfolio layer below that, potentially a solution layer if you need it. We also have our program or team of teams layer. If you work with the scaled Agile framework, it is often referred to as the Agile release train layer. And then we have our Agile team layer at the bottom here. And depending on which layer of scale you really work at is going to determine which tools you use and what you can do in those tools as well. Each of these groups of people are really doing different types of work. So we've already mentioned a few of these over here on the right. At the top layer, we are talking about our strategy. Who are we as a company? What are the really high-level goals we're trying to achieve in the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years? We can break that down into strategic themes that are broken down into our epics, where we're again doing our budgeting. We are really trying to decide what we are going to work on as an organization. We may have our capabilities in the mix, but most commonly we're going from our epic layer to our feature layer, that work we're trying to deliver in a program increment. And then our teams are breaking those features down into their stories or tasks that they are working to complete in an iteration. Those time boxes are then represented here on the blue scale, really looking at multi-year periods, our program increments, our releases, and our sprints as well. Jira Align also has several other modules that they refer to as business vectors, like products, OKRs, value streams, et cetera, that really plug into each of these layers of scale as well. Right. Just a little bit more standard information about Jira Align. There are 2 editions of the tool. There's a standard and an enterprise edition. Most commonly, we see organizations opting for the enterprise level as it does come with a sandbox environment. There is an add-on for Jira Align currently. It's called Enterprise Insights. It is essentially a data lake. It's a SQL database that takes all of your information from Jira Align, and then you can connect it to a BI tool of your choice. Really common ones we see are Power BI and Tableau, and you can really enable some custom reporting for your organization with this add-on. Just a little bit in the world of what's new in Jira Align and what's upcoming. There is a new objectives tree experience. This is something they released a few months ago. It is continuing to see updates. It is a big UI overhaul, essentially, of this objectives tree. We do have a video on our YouTube channel breaking it down, really every update involved in that. If you want to check that out, Heather will throw a link to it in the chat. We also have continued API and Jira connector improvements. They have removed the original time tracking add-on with Jira Align. Atlassian did mention that they haven't really sold this in a couple years. They don't have a ton of users of it. And there is some integration with Tempo timesheets if you are needing time tracking capabilities. And finally, they are working to improve the consistency across the tool at Atlassian. If you're interested in keeping up to date with the latest updates on Jira Align, also in the chat is a link to our Jira Align updates playlist. We put out a video every update and just break down the latest changes, give any recommendations of things you may need to update yourself. Now that we've talked about Jira Align a bit, the last real concept around it I want to talk about is what it takes to implement Jira Align. As you've gathered, it is a large tool and it does take some time to implement. So I will walk through each of these, but in general, this is the standard implementation path of Jira Align. So whether you work with XPM, another solutions partner, or Atlassian themselves, you will likely go through this exact, if not a very similar process. So generally, whenever we are implementing Jira Align, we like to start with one program or Agile release train over about a 3-month period. Sometimes it takes a little less, sometimes a little more. The general phases we always go through, we go through a planning stage. There is always a lot of individuals we need to coordinate with these implementations. So we go through a small phase of making sure we have the right people in the right room. We do discovery, learning about your organization, your process, your current state, your desired state, etc. Then we go into configuration. We do training around the tool, and then we ultimately want to use those tools in a PI planning event. After we go through that first launch, we will then work to expand to programs as well as up into the portfolio after that first 3-month period. If you have any questions about this process or want more details on what it takes to implement Jira Align, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to have a call with you and talk about this process. Before I jump into Jira Align, I do want to make mention of just the tool I previously mentioned, Advanced Roadmaps. This was formerly known as Portfolio for Jira. As the name suggests, it is a road mapping tool, and it can be used to help you scale your organization prior to getting into Jira Align. Or maybe if Jira Align isn't the ultimate goal for you, it can still be used to help you with scaling in your organization. Advanced Roadmaps is included in Jira Cloud Premium and Jira Data Center instances. And really what it's overall great at is helping us grow our Agile organization by giving us that cross-team outlook and letting us roll work, again, from that execution layer up to the higher level initiatives of our organization. As you'll see today, Jira Align does have a bit more robust capabilities in these areas, especially in the higher level planning area. But if you are just starting out on your scale journey, Advanced Roadmaps can be super helpful. And even if you're already in Jira Align, Advanced Roadmaps may be a great tool for people who are still working in Jira as well. We actually offer another free webinar that takes a bit of a deeper look into Advanced Roadmaps and also discusses some other portfolio management tools in Jira. It's called the Project Portfolio Management with Atlassian webinar, and Heather will throw a link to that in the chat. It's another free 1-hour webinar if you want to check that out. All right. Let's go ahead and jump into Jira Align. Let me give this a refresh. I probably need to log in again. While I'm doing this, I will mention Jira Align is a cloud-based tool. It can work with your single sign-on platform if that is something your organization has implemented. The first thing I like to talk about is the navigation of the tool, and I like to do this for two reasons. One, it is a little bit different than other Atlassian tools you may be familiar with, and two, it is going to highlight all of those concepts we just talked about, organizing around those layers of scale, looking at our hierarchy here in the tool. So to start, I like to talk just about navigating across the tool, which is done on this left-hand blue panel here. Excuse me, on any of these icons, you can click, it will expand the panel, and then you can look at the different modules available. This is just your profile here. I'm going to jump down to this little web icon. I'll come back to the other options in a moment. Starting here, we are talking about our enterprise layer. If you think back to the slides, this was that top layer of scale. This is the top layer we have here in Jira Align. When we're talking about people working at the strategy level or working at the enterprise level, we're talking about working with strategy. You'll see that in a lot of the modules here. We have our strategy room, strategic backlog, strategy tree, etc. Below that, we then have that portfolio layer. We're working with our portfolio backlog. We're talking about our themes and our epics. We might also be working with other work items, things like our vision, our personas, etc. You'll notice that these panels are all broken down into different into different groups. We have usually our most common links up here at the top. Under the manage section are those work items you're managing. We have our tracks, so our reporting, popular reports around this area, and transform at the bottom, or other activities as well as some reports as well. A lot of these areas also have a show all button where you can then expand to even more modules. So I think you're probably now realizing what I meant when I said it's a really large tool. Just in the portfolio panel alone, we have dozens of different modules we can use. Below the portfolio layer, we do have a solution layer. Again, this isn't always needed. During that implementation, your partner or implementation partner should really be working with you to determine if this is necessary for your organization. If it's not, we can leave this turned off. If it is necessary, then we can work with you to get it enabled. We then have that program or team of teams layer. Again, we're working with our features at this layer. We are working with things like our program board, our program objectives, and we're going to take a look at both of these in just a little bit as well. We do have the team layer represented. Again, teams are really intended to be working in Jira software, but we do need their work to sync over to Jira Align to get that full roll up from team to the enterprise. So there is a team level here. Some people, like your product owners or scrum masters, are typically going to be swiveling between those two systems, and they may find it useful to utilize some of the modules here. But on average, the average Agile team member will be working in Jira software with the out-of-the-box or potential add-on capabilities in that system. We do have a product module. Again, doesn't always need to be enabled, just depends on how you're really organized, but your implementation partner can work with you to determine if this is needed. At the very bottom, we can navigate to our reports, and then we have the administration panel. Typically, you may not see this unless you are an admin. I like to jump here and just mention one thing at this point. A lot of the terminology in Jira Align is customizable. So if during the slides or even during clicking around so far, you haven't recognized some of the words I'm saying, it may just be that your organization calls it something different. But as we scroll here, you can see most of the terms in Jira Align are customizable. So don't fret if you use Jira Align and my buttons say something different than yours do, or if some of this doesn't map up to your organization directly. It is customizable. We use generally just the standard safe terminology, but it can be customized here. I'm just going to go back to the home page here. Real quick, these top two icons, the magnifying glass and the star, these are just some pro tips I like to give. It is an introductory webinar, so if you're new to Jira Align and have it, these might be some helpful tips for you. The search bar here, or magnifying glass, is a search bar for this navigation panel. So you saw as we were going through, there's a ton of modules under each level. While your implementation partner should work with you to really toggle off anything that isn't necessary for you right now. Maybe it's something you'll never use. Maybe it's something that just isn't useful at this moment, but you may mature into. They should work with you to toggle some of those options off just so it's easier to navigate and adopt for end users. Even then, you still may have dozens of options under each level. This search bar will search that panel. So if you don't know where the program board is located, you can absolutely just search for it here and navigate very quickly. Below that is then a star icon, and this is your favorites. Think of it just as you would favoriting or making a bookmark in your browser. On any page that you use frequently, you can add in a favorite, just press this little plus, or you can even search for a page here. Make your navigation even that much easier to your most frequently used spaces or modules. There's also a recents button here, so if you need to go back to something, weren't quite sure what report or what module you were on, you can use this as well. So that's really the overall navigation of the tool, thinking of it as that hierarchy of work from our team up to our enterprise. Let's now talk about this top panel here, or top bar here. It doesn't look very grayed out on my screen here, but on some screens, it's typically a bit grayer. This bar is what we call the context bar. You may also hear it called the configuration bar or config bar for short. And what this first section of it really does is it serves as a tier 1 filter for the entire system. What we can do here is select the different slices of data we want to visualize. And then as we click through any of those modules we just saw on the navigation panel, the data that is displayed will be filtered through these selections. The first option here is that people or scaled layer slice. So we see things like our portfolios, our programs, all the way down to that Agile team layer. We can click on any of these to make a different selection. We can also visualize the entire hierarchy on the right. You can interact with the either view here. They really do the same thing, just a different visualization. Next to that, we can choose our time slice. Most commonly, we're going to be selecting a program increment here, as I have, but there are some date range options as well. You can add in other things like release vehicles, products, organization structure, and under the settings here, you can add a couple other options in. You can also save your configuration. So if you are frequently going to view a specific set of teams, a specific set of programs, etc., you could save that for yourself. And another little pro tip, next to that is a reset all. Pressing this will clear the entire context bar. Why I like to mention this and focus on it for a second is because 9 times out of 10, when we are working with organizations, someone will send in a request saying, I'm looking at a module, but I'm not seeing the data I was expecting. And about 90% of the time, the answer is, have you checked your context bar? And they have something selected that's filtering out data that they didn't expect in that context bar. So it's important to be aware of this and its functionality. Once you get used to it, it's really a really useful piece of the tool to get that exact slice of data you are looking for. I also want to mention for any admins on the call, this does apply to some administration screens as well. On the far right of this bar, there's a lot of icons. The most used ones, we are able to add custom checklists into Jira Align. So you can add individual or shared checklists to help guide your users on the process they should be following. There are some in-app notifications under the bell. This does currently just include Jira Align notifications. It doesn't integrate with other Atlassian tool notifications at this time. I'm going to skip to the create button for just a second. Just like in Jira or Confluence, this create button is how we create our work items. Again, depending on your role and what level of the organization you work at, that is going to determine what you can actually create here. Next to that, we see a magnifying glass to the left here. And one of the more unique things about the Jira Align interface is that we're always going to see 2 search icons. This one here, I like to think of as the work item search. And you can remember that because it is right next to the create work item button. When we open this up, it is going to let us search for keywords or work item IDs. If you're searching for the ID, you're going to want to throw that hashtag, octathorpe, #, whatever you want to call it, in here and then search for your work item number. Each work item starts its numbering at 1. So when you put in something like 1, 2, 3, you can have multiple work items with that ID. You can see here, it groups those results into each individual work item. The other search icon we already talked about, it's on the navigation panel. It's on the blue panel, it searches the blue panel. It's next to the create button, it searches the work items. At the bottom is one of my favorite pieces of Jira Align. It is the help button. This is a contextual help button, meaning that it changes what it shows you depending on what module you're on. I use this all the time. I work in this tool every day. I advise people on this tool every day, and I wind up using the help button pretty much every day. So it's really good to be familiar with it. It will show you the Jira Align documentation for that module. Right now, it's just the latest release notes, but if I went to the program board, it would show me, you guessed it, the program board documentation. And you can click the title here to open up the documentation website and view the article full page. All right. Now that we have looked at the overall navigation of the tool and we have really seen how it is organized around those hierarchies of people, work, and time, let's now talk about the two main overarching uses of Jira Align. The two main ones that we see are strategic top-down planning and the visualization of work in progress as it rolls up from that team layer up to the enterprise layer. Again, connecting our execution to our strategy. And that is what we are going to focus on for the rest of this webinar, starting with the top-down planning portion. I want to take a moment to mention that, as you saw, this is a very large tool. We can't focus on every option you saw available. If you have any questions or want a demonstration of different areas of the tool, feel free to reach out to us and we can see if we can set something up. We're going to focus on those most commonly used and most useful areas of the tool that we see, especially for new organizations. All right, so starting with focusing on the top-down planning portion, we're going to start at the very top, taking a look at our strategy room. Most layers of scale have a room in Jira Align, and they are really used as a dashboard for that layer of scale. In the strategy room, we're going to see, as you might guess, a lot of information about our strategy. At the very top, we see our mission, vision, and values. Who are we as an organization? What are we striving to do? It's right here in the tool for you to align around continuously. Below that, we then see our strategy pyramid. So here we have our mission, vision, and values. We can then connect those to things like our long-term, yearly, and quarterly goals. These terms are customizable, as well as we can toggle some of these layers on or off. So if you don't have this many layers of goals, we can toggle them off. If you have more, there are a couple more that can be toggled on. We then connect our goals to our work items, our themes that we already talked about, our epics, our features, etc. This hierarchy or this pyramid really just shows you how we are connecting, again, all the way from our missions down to our features. You can also see some overall progress over here. A snapshot is just a period of time that we can customize and identify in the tool. And then it's going to show us all of the themes, epics, features, stories, dependencies, and our overall progress towards completing those. So we can get an idea of how we are progressing over time. Below that, we then see our OKRs, our objectives and key results we can add in here. We can use our key results to identify our overall progress we are making towards our objectives, and we can see that heat map here. Below that, we then even see our OKR tree. This is connecting our goals all the way down to our objectives and showing us, again, our key results progress. We even have a strategy backlog where we are able to view each of these individual items, of course, to edit them or potentially to just view that relationship. Oops, I'll click on yearly goals here, and more details about each of those options. Overall, this strategy room and strategy backlog is a way to easily see and analyze our progress, again, from the team layer all the way up to our strategy. Another commonly used area for planning is our backlog. Jira Align has a backlog module, and it can be used to view the backlog at each layer of scale. Here, I clicked on the portfolio backlog. In the top left here, you can see that I could toggle to any of those layers of scale all the way down to, again, my team layer at the story level. Let's just talk a little bit about what all we can do here in the backlog. First, whenever we are viewing our work items, we are actually able to view two levels here. So using the caret, you can view any child item. So I'm looking at my epics and I can view my child features here. We can also rank items to show prioritization. So by dragging and dropping, if you're familiar with a Jira Scrum Board backlog, very similar to that functionality, to just show that overall prioritization. The backlog also has several other features that really lend itself to the idea of planning. In the top here, we are able to use our orphan objects button. This shows us Are our work items we're viewing linked up to a parent, and do they have an estimate here? This is really useful at that feature level, especially prior to a PI planning event, making sure our data is valid going into that event. We can, of course, customize our view to view the most useful data for us in this planning process and apply filters to narrow down our information. There are also some Kanban views of this board or of this information. So if you want to see more of a Kanban style board, you can use one of these views here. We can also use this prioritize button for bulk prioritization as well. So lots of different pieces to this backlog that really lend itself to the idea of planning. I do want to just show you what it looks like to work with some of these work items as well. So I'm going to open up this Epic issue type. This is always a high level of interest for most organizations. Again, the Epic level is where we're doing a lot of our intake of new ideas, where we are really trying to decide, is this something that is going to be valuable for our organization to produce, identifying maybe a minimum viable product, making a hypothesis, and then deciding, are we going to pivot or persevere, and also doing a lot of budgeting at this level as well. So just to take a look at some of the details you can collect on our epics. Most work items start with the details panel. You're just gathering the general details, descriptions, who's going to be working on this work item, who owns the work item. When it comes to planning, we might be doing things like weighted shortest job first, which is a prioritization model, both in Jira Align as well as in the scaled Agile framework. And we're going to be providing our overall estimate. In this case, we're using t-shirt size, but there are a couple of other options like points and weeks available as well. Most work items will have a full details button to expand even more fields, so we can add in some specific dates around when we want to complete this, when we are planning to start it, etc. And then below, on an individual work item, you can also see some of that hierarchy. So here we can see the features that are parented by this epic. When we expand this, we get an idea of the overall progress of each of these features as well. We can see other work items like dependencies, objectives, etc. And if I scroll up, also on each work item is going to be this little area of progress. Again, when we're talking about overall progress, we're talking about linking or connecting our execution up to our strategy. So this area right here isn't just looking one layer down, it's looking 2 layers down into our team level, looking at our overall story point progress. Those teams who are executing on the work, where are they at in delivering that work? So we see that story point and feature progress here as well. Epics do have several other tabs where we can collect things like our design hypothesis, starting our lean business case here. We can have a custom intake form allowing us to collect information on intake. So when we are going through that analysis process, we have some initial information. On benefits, it gives us that lean business case, taking information from the previous tabs, as well as other information we can collect, like our future state and desired outcome. What is our current situation, etc. The value tab really does demonstrate how Jira Align is focused on value engineering. Here we're able to build out a hypothesis. We're able to put some metrics around it and then decide eventually, are we going to pivot or persevere on this? Time and skills has a little bit of that scheduling and milestone tracking. The spend tab does have some budgeting capabilities. Jira Align isn't intended to be your budgetary tool of record, but it can be very useful once you have your data flowing appropriately to get that idea of how much have we spent for this epic. Again, it's looking at that accepted spend down to that story level. So really looking through those layers of scale to get that overall progress. There are some forecasting capabilities as well as general links we can add in. Real quick, I want to also toggle down to the feature backlog. Again, the feature level is where we're going to be collecting that work for our team of teams level. Just want to show you what this one looks like a little bit. Let's open this up. Similar to the epic, we have a lot of details we're going to be collecting here. If we scroll down, we're going to see a little bit more geared around sprints here. What target sprints are we targeting to start and complete this work? We still have our prioritization and estimation. And then at the bottom, we're going to talk about stories that are parented by this feature. Scrolling up, you may see some tabs occasionally for certain features around design, value, and spend as well. But a couple things I want to call out. This Y button up here at the top is really useful for understanding why we are working on this specific work item. You're going to see information about the specific feature as well as its parent epic, that epic's parent theme, things around the weighted shortest job first value, as well as success metrics and business cases if they are added in. What's really great is this information can also sync back to Jira software. So even at the Agile team level, we can see why this feature we are working on is important. Speaking of which, when you are syncing with Jira software, you will see this View in Jira button that will take you to that related Jira software feature. Just to call out these features in Jira Align sync with the Jira software epic issue type. Your implementation partner can work with you around customizing that terminology. A couple other areas that are really useful for, again, that top-down planning. A real highlight of the tool is the program board. This is at that program level. If you have participated in a PI planning event before, you have probably seen something very similar, though it may have been in more of a physical format. So we have seen this historically done on a whiteboard with a lot of sticky notes, note cards, tape, and string. But now we are able to do it digitally in this in Jira Align. And a couple of really great benefits to that. First, we work in a more remote digital hybrid environment, and this allows us to still work with our colleagues in those situations. Additionally, it is a real-time updating report, meaning that it is always going to display the most accurate or the most up-to-date information, allowing us to revisit this and see what work have we completed as planned, what work has been moved, etc. So just to walk you through what the program board consists of, each row here represents a team on the program that I've selected in my context bar. And each column represents a sprint here, again, from the PI selected in the context bar, though you can select multiple programs or multiple PIs. If you were starting a PI planning event, you would not see near as much data on this board. You would see a lot of these rectangles, which represent our features in this unplanned sprint column. Throughout the PI planning event, team members would work together to plan out these features into the target sprints. They're able to click on any of these work items and expand a details panel over here. And then they can provide information like their team target completion sprint, as well as view other information like the stories that are already linked, what teams are they working with, etc. When they choose a sprint and X out, the board will update, and you'll notice that it moved that feature over on the board. Also during PI planning, teams will typically be identifying dependencies or areas that they need assistance to actually complete their work. Those are also represented on our program board as these bow tie or plus icons. And you'll notice that if you hover over any of these icons, it will actually show you that linked work. So here I'm hovering over a dependency. It tells me what feature is linked to that dependency, what feature is dependent on this dependency being completed. We're also typically making PI objectives throughout the program, the PI planning event, and those are represented at the top of the board here as well. We can plan those into target sprints so we can see when we're expecting to deliver the value that those objectives are intended to achieve. You'll also notice there's a lot of color coding on this board. I like to think of it as really stoplight mentality. Green and blue means good. That means we've either completed the work or we're in progress as expected. Red, orange, yellow, that means we have some potential planning errors. One of the great things about the program board is if you actually open up any of the work items that are red, yellow, orange, it's going to show you what those planning errors are. And you can then work to mitigate those or to fix those. Again, this is a real-time report, so you'll notice that I'm actually in the middle of, let's see, sprint 27 here. So I can actually look back and see what work we have completed, what work we haven't, what work is potentially at risk for the future as we're wrapping up this program increment. I do want to mention that there is also a legend for this. So if you're worrying about being able to interpret this, there is a really great legend in the top right. You can also use the help button. It gives a really detailed breakdown of what every color, icon, symbol means on this board as well. As we mentioned on this board, we are able to visualize our dependencies that are identified throughout PI planning. We can actually go to the dependency module as well to look at our dependency management functionality. This is a really great piece of the tool for most of the organizations we work with. We have found that it's a really common struggle for many organizations to understand, coordinate, track, and collaborate across teams when it comes to dependencies. Features like this of Jira Align are really useful for companies to easily visualize and track those dependencies and hopefully ultimately work to really arrange teams and programs so that they are mitigating some of these dependencies as well. Here we can see the dependencies again for our mobile program and in our PI5. And there's a lot of really great visualizations here. You can easily see work you have requested of others, work that is still yours to do. I'm going to open one of these dependencies up just so you can really see that there even is a small dependency workflow here. We start with not committed, committed, and then done. I always like to mention that dependencies should always begin with a conversation. Being able to track dependencies in a tool like Jira Align is really great, but it never replaces the conversation that should be had first. We should be talking with that team we're dependent on, determining if this is a valid dependency, if they're the right group to talk to, if they can complete the work, if the work isn't already completed, etc. Then we can log it in the tool. The system expects a lot of kind of back and forth within the tool. We can provide a needed by date here. That responding team can commit to that dependency. They can link their stories to work on the dependency, and eventually it can be marked done. Jira Align also includes a lot of dependency visualizations under this Maps button. There are 5. I'm going to just focus on one, the wheel view. This is always a crowd favorite as it really starts to highlight where all your dependencies exist. We can see here we have a lot of dependencies existing in the system. We can also interact with this wheel if we want to focus on a specific team. This will also show programs or external entities you've added in the tool as well. And we can start to really understand where these dependencies exist and start to analyze, is there something we can do to help rearrange our teams so that they don't have so many dependencies and so many handoffs and can complete more work on their own. Jira Align also includes a risk management module, so I'm going to open that up briefly. A piece of PI planning is also typically identifying risks to that plan. Risks can also be added really at any time as well. So I'm not going to walk too in depth through these. I just want to open them up and mention that Jira Align uses the ROAM methodology for risk management. It is represented on every risk with this visual here, showing you what each of those letters of the acronym mean: resolved, owned, accepted, and mitigated. The piece of the risk management module I really like, especially when we're talking in the PI planning sense, under more actions here, there is a risk ROAM report. And this is a very nice grid to just show you overall, how are we handling risks for our program, for our PI. I won't get on my soapbox here, but generally we always advise to not utilize the accepted too much. We don't want to just be accepting most risks. We want to be trying to resolve or mitigate them. And this is a great place where you can come and see how are we actually handling these risks and review them with your program as well. As you can see from the tour we've taken of Jira Align so far, it really is this robust tool that helps us with our strategic planning, all the way from our strategic goals down to our Agile team's execution of stories. Jira Align does help us with our top-down planning, and it also helps us with understanding the roll-up and connection of work from that team level up through the other layers of scale. So that's what we're going to take a look at next. But just briefly, I do want to talk a little bit about XPM. As I mentioned, XPM is a Platinum Solutions partner with Atlassian, really I like to just sum it up by saying we're a jack of all trades when it comes to the Atlassian ecosystem. We focus our efforts around 3 main offers. So we have training that consists of free webinars like this one, as well as paid training classes. Consulting services is really a catch-all. We do implementations, migrations, just consulting around cleanup of your existing system, etc. And then we also have custom development options. So we were actually born out of a custom development shop. We have a team of full stack developers who are able to jump in whenever we are needing to build something custom as well. All right, here we have our upcoming events list. Do feel free to check out our website for more details on any of these, as well as connect with us on LinkedIn. I do want to mention that in the near future, we are hoping to also offer a public Jira Align bootcamp that will focus around using the tool at the program level, that end user experience. So if that's something you're interested in sending some of your users to, or if you just want to get a closer look at Jira Align, keep your eye posted on our website or subscribe to our company newsletter on our website as well to keep up to date with that. So hopefully we will have more details on that soon. Let's go ahead and jump back into the tool and talk about our visualization of work. I'm going to start at the program level, just again mentioning that at the team level, we should be working mostly in Jira software where we have great visualizations like our boards, dashboards, and out-of-the-box reports, and a whole host of add-ons to help us visualize our work as well in the marketplace. So we're going to start mostly at the program layer here in Jira Align. I'm going to start in the program room. Similar to the strategy room, the program room is intended to help us really visualize our work for our program and our program increment. It's taking a second to load here. We have a lot of widgets here. There are some customization options under this view configuration button, but these are the standard ones that we see being most useful. And really all of these widgets are centered around helping us understand our progress and what all work is involved in our program increment. Right from the get-go, we're going to see information about how many features, stories, and story points are we working on. We're going to see what is our overall load versus our velocity. This is super useful after you've been in the tool for a couple PIs. It will start to learn your velocity, and you can use this to understand, are we accurately planning? Are we overloading our teams, etc.? You can break that down into your team progress and load. We have great visualizations around risks as well as dependencies and objectives. In the middle here, we have one of those customized checklists, again, helping us understand our process we should be going through. These can actually link to different modules in Jira Align or even external resources. We see our overall sprint path as well as our backlog here. So this is actually an interactive module, so we can get the same information we would from the backlog. And in the top right, just some overall progress metrics. What's really great about this as well is we can even narrow this down to an individual team with these team icons. So you can actually filter this down even further, looking at an individual team. I see this being used a lot in ceremonies like our Scrum of Scrum events, our PO Sync events. A lot of times that Scrum Master or product owner will pull up the program room, filter to their team, and then talk about their overall progress or any of the blockers they may have. Let's see. Next, we'll just briefly take a look at the roadmap in Jira Align. Again, thinking about visualizing our work, the roadmap can be very useful to understanding the overall progress, as well as really what we're targeting when it comes to when we are hoping to complete things like our epics and our features as well. There's lots of customizations and settings, and with the time we have left, we aren't going to dig through a ton of them, but I'll just mention a couple highlights. We are able to view multiple levels of our roadmap. Here we are viewing our epics, and below that, any child features. You're also able to interact with both PIs and sprints, as well as hard dates that you can add with the different date timeline views as well. We can even view things like objectives, which are these flags, as well as milestones, which are these little stars here. And these numbers just represent stories on those features. So you can really gather quite a lot from this roadmap as far as the progress, as well as really what we're targeting as well. We'll just take a look at a couple more of the rooms really quick. We're going to look at the portfolio room. Again, a dashboard essentially for that portfolio level. It is telling me I need to select a specific portfolio to actually interact with this, so we'll do that. Some of the modules require specific selection in the context bar, but the tool will typically tell you that, or it may have some in-page filters like you see here. Again, at the portfolio level, we're talking themes, we're talking epics. We're going to see that here. We're going to see our overall theme progress. How are we going at completing those overall themes? We are also going to see our program increment roadmap. If we selected multiple, we'd see those here. Are we getting close to completing that PI in the form of story points? So again, at the portfolio level, we're still talking down at the story point level from our teams as well. We can see our backlog module as well as some general progress here. We can even toggle into things like our financials or a resources tab to get a more financial perspective as well. Real quick, we'll toggle to the product room. So again, the product module isn't always necessary. It just depends on really how you are aligned across your organization. But when we, let's see, I need the checking app here, check scanning app. When we need it, we are able to input different products into the tool, and this room will then show us a bit of information around our products and the work items that are linked to it. The last thing I will show is the reports module, and this is going to have a ton of reports available. I like to just show scrolling through this. I've scrolled a few times now on my mouse, and I'm just down to the reports that begin with D. So there's a lot of reports here. There are some quick toggles on the left to help you navigate this. Also, just a pro tip in navigating, this search bar here is actually a piece of AI in the tool that they are wanting you to ask a specific question. Personally, I don't choose to memorize these specific questions. Instead, I just use Control F on my browser, and I can search for something like that Rome report, and it will help me find that report here. Again, when you select on a report, you can absolutely use the help button. It will show you, or it will tell you any prerequisite for the report, as well as the general metrics it is telling you. I do like to always mention that not every report in Jira Align is created equally. What I mean by that is not everyone's process fits all of these reports or the information that the report is needing. So for example, if you aren't participating in time tracking and a report relies on time tracking, we don't recommend that you adjust your process just to use that report. Instead, we'd recommend that we toggle that report off and see if there's another report that can give us the information we're looking for. When you first dive into the reporting in Jira Align, it can be overwhelming. So outside of that tip, I always like to say, start with the metric that you are looking for and then start digging into reports to understand if it shows you what you need. Also, keep in mind that that Enterprise Insights add-on can be used to create more custom reporting in a tool like, in a BI tool like Power BI or Tableau. All right, that really wraps up the demo portion of the webinar. Hopefully this has been helpful for you to get a glimpse into Jira Align and learn some of those overarching concepts that play into that tool. We will go ahead and move into the Q&A portion, but first I do want to announce our winner of our AirPods. So congratulations, Marlene Audit. You are our winner. If you will send your shipping address to team@xbm.com, it'll be put in the chat here. We will get these shipped out to you. All right. And with that, we will move into the Q&A. Find my panel here. All right, looks like the first question is Jira Align available for data center version, not Jira Cloud. So there is a server version of Jira Align, but I do want to mention, you said not Jira Cloud. It does connect with Jira Software Data Center and Jira Software Cloud as well. So you can really work with any configuration you need there. How does Jira Align work with Atlas? So Atlas is one of Atlassian's newer products. It is focused on trying to give really a high-level status report of your work from Jira Software. So any of the work that syncs between Jira Software and Jira Align, primarily at our feature and our team level, would be reported over in Atlas. Jira Align doesn't currently link directly to Jira to Atlas, but any of that work that's syncing between the tools would be represented. It does seem like Atlassian is working to integrate Jira Align with more of their base products, so we may see more of that integration in the future. So Jira Align is at the program level. So Jira Align has many levels. It does have a program level. This is really the team of teams level. You may have heard it called the Agile release train level as well, but it does have other layers of scale. We do start working with it primarily at the program level, then we'll go up into the portfolio and into the enterprise as well. But we do have the teams represented. Again, that data will sync from Jira software. All right, perfect. Does Jira Align have access levels? I'm going to make an assumption that you are referring to permissions, and yes, it does. It has a couple different levels of permissioning, somewhat similar to Jira software. We have an idea of a system role that grants really what all can we do across the system. And then we have team roles as well. I like to think of those almost as project roles in Jira software, in that it grants permission to what data we can see. So if you're a member of a portfolio, you can see that portfolio's data. You can take that down to the program or team level as well. Cool, let's see here. All right, looks like we have one that's a really common question that we get about the program board, that it seems kind of overwhelming, and asking if teams actually utilize that visualization during PI planning. The short answer is yes, they do. Watching a team plan with this board is somewhat beautiful almost, because you really get to see all that work fill in, and you get to see the colors change as they mitigate any of those planning warnings that it gives. A couple of tips to working with the tool. I will totally agree with you. When you first get into it, it can be a little bit of an adjustment to work with this, but some things that we've seen really help. In the top right here, you are able to change your view. For demo purposes, I leave this as the normal view. It's these icons, or I'm sorry, I leave this as the small view, which is just these icons. But if you switch to the normal view, it will actually give you the icon plus the brief description and ID as well. So that can show you a little bit more information, be easier to work with. You can also open this up in full screen if you want a little bit more screen real estate. And you also have the legend here. Can be really helpful to pull up the legend or the documentation around the legend during that PI planning. Also, there are some configurations that you can add in if you want to see just certain types of features or certain work items. We do recommend typically having this all turned on during PI planning, but post PI planning, you can use this to filter out and use it more as a report. So those are just some tips. We often see during PI planning, we'll be using both Jira software and Jira Align. And so having different team members take different responsibilities in the various tools can also help. Doing a lot of screen sharing if we're doing it virtual, or trying to center around similar visualizations if we're in person. All right, let's see. I think we have time for one more. I missed starting 15 minutes, wanted to know about the winner. Whoever said that they missed the first 15 minutes, so sorry. We did choose a winner at random. We have announced it. It was Marlene Audette. Thank you so much for attending. We are giving out swag in most of our webinars right now. So if you wish to enter again, you can attend a different webinar, which you can find on our website. Really quick, the last question here, anything to consider before we start working with Jira Align? The number one thing I would say is to define your process. Work through your process for a little bit, document it and publish it somewhere that is accessible for everyone, whether that be something like the Jira Align checklist function or Confluence or SharePoint, to really make sure that everyone is on board with that process. And then work with your administrators, or if you're in an implementation or implementation partner, to make sure that the system is working as best as possible for your process. All right. Thank you all so much for attending. That does wrap up our introduction to Jira Align webinar. Again, if you have any questions about anything that we talked about today, or Jira Align in general, really any Atlassian product as well, don't hesitate to reach out for us. Thank you all so much, and have a great rest of your week.